What if I were to tell you that it's truly possible to cure bipolar disorder forever? Would you immediately dismiss the possibility because of the way you've been trained to think about mental illness? Or would you keep your heart open long enough to allow hope to come in and change everything? I am 100% certain that it's possible to be completely healed from bipolar disorder. You see, I faced bipolar, very severe bipolar, for years and years. I understand the emotional roller coaster. I understand being so depressed that it takes all of your effort to get through the days. I understand manic episodes and being so out of control and out of touch with reality that I had to be hospitalized. After I got frustrated enough with how it was affecting my life and how it was holding me back, I began looking at things differently, and I developed a process that allowed me to heal. And I believe that freedom is possible for you as well. And in this video, I will share with you my personal story of overcoming, the process I used for healing, and what your first steps should be if you wish to leave bipolar behind too. Now, all of what I just mentioned is in my book. That link and the description below will take you to the site where you can grab your own copy. On that site, I also have my best in-depth trainings on all the ins and outs for healing. And today, I'm going to share an introduction to what you need to know so that you can get off the emotional roller coaster. Now, as eager as you are probably to get into the how, it's important to understand why I have such confidence in what I'm sharing with you. Everything I share on my channel and in my book is not theory. I have lived through this. I have lived through severe anxiety disorders, depression, and I've managed the most severe form of bipolar disorder that is found in the DSM. But more than that, I have come out victorious. I had warning signs of bipolar disorder since my teen years, but I didn't receive a diagnosis until I landed myself in a psych ward due to psychotic behavior in my 30s. Now, from that point on, I did all the things that you're supposed to do to manage the condition. And then, one night, everything changed. On that night, my mind was racing. My thoughts were too fast, and every idea felt urgent and critically important. I couldn't slow my mind down enough to sit down and be calm, and certainly not enough to be able to lie down and sleep. I remember thinking, why does it feel so hot in here? It was like the speed of my brain was raising my body temperature. And I noticed I was compelled to line up my bottles in perfect little lines, and it had been a long time since I was doing that kind of thing. My mood was rotating from happy and bubbly, like laughing a lot, to sadness with tears streaming down my face. And at times, both extremes were kind of muddled up together. And I had been here before, erratic and sleepless. And so in the middle of the night, I was like, oh, crap. I know what this is. Relapse was here. It had come for me again. All this time it had been lurking in the shadows, pretending it had moved on. I'd not been able to avoid it. I felt crushed and embarrassed that my attempts to manage the anxiety and the swings of bipolar disorder had failed me. I tried to stay calm. I tried to stay still. I knew that the tide of chemicals were rushing through my brain. My husband and I, we switched into crisis intervention mode. We were both pretty terrified. You see, I didn't want to go back to the mental hospital. What was so frustrating to me was this wasn't supposed to be happening. I had read many books on managing bipolar disorder. I'd done all the exercises and the workbooks on resolving trauma. I was on medications to regulate my mood and to keep the anxiety in check. And I had submitted to years and years of counseling. I filled up journal after journal as I worked through my issues. So I kept thinking, how can this be happening? It was that moment, the moment that the meds and the years of counseling and all the expert advice from psychologists and their books that were filled with psychobabble failed me. Thankfully, due to the research and hard work I had put in up to that point, I was able to halt the progression and avoid another stay in the mental hospital. But it was at that point in time that tipped over everything for me. As I faced relapse again, I knew that I was missing something important. I knew the medical community must be missing something because their way wasn't working. Because what's the point of counseling and meds if it doesn't even stop mania from coming on again? And if it can't prevent me from sliding off into depression again? So I came to a decision. Enough of this. I was tired of seeing my husband scared. I was tired of watching my business struggle. And I was not going to pass this legacy down to my children. Anger welled up within me, and it fueled the fire to pursue cracking the code. I doubled down and conducted more research, and I prayed a somewhat dangerous prayer. God, show me how to heal. Show me what I need to do to bring healing to my mind and my body. Show me what I need to do to get out of this medication-shaped prison. I knew that my life wasn't meant to be wasted managing an illness. I knew that I was destined for freedom. I understood that gaining freedom would mean that I could accomplish so much more with my life, and that I would have the ability to impact the lives of others. And my good Heavenly Father answered those honest, heartfelt prayers. He was faithful to show me step by step over a course of years all the things I needed for healing. And this system, this process, wasn't just covering up the problem like a Band-Aid. It allowed me to get to the root of the problem. After I healed and all of my symptoms that were associated with anxiety, depression, and bipolar went away, my medical team said, "You're ready. You're ready to come off meds." And so I was closely monitored for a long time just to be sure I was okay. And now I have lived without meds, without counseling, without the ups and downs, without any of the problems I had before. And the most exciting part of this for me is that the healing process I discovered didn't just work for me. It has worked for many, many others. In fact, I've interviewed a number of our graduates, and you can watch their testimonies of healing right here on this channel. I hope at this point you are thinking, wow, this is amazing, and that hope is coming alive for you. And you're starting to wonder what might be possible for you. Yes, healing is possible, but it does take a strategic process. Now, at this point in your life, you probably have tried a number of things. And one of the reasons that you are still stuck is that everything you've tried has been to the purpose of managing. The medical community, and yes, even your counselor, doesn't really believe that healing is possible. And they certainly have not been trained in how to bring you that outcome. So let's get into the how. How did I heal? How did I finally leave bipolar behind? As I mentioned before, the nitty-gritty of all of this is in my book, but let's pull back the curtain so you can discover the how. It all starts with the understanding that bipolar disorder is a body, mind, and spirit problem, which means we need a body, mind, and spirit solution. Again, we need a body, mind, and spirit solution. And this idea, this concept, I won't get into the exact how, where I discovered this, but where I was able to confirm it is in the Bible with 1 Thessalonians 5:23. So now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Now you probably noticed something different. I said body, mind, and spirit, and in this verse it says soul. And if you look up this word and you look up what soul means, it really means our will, our mind, and our emotions. And it's easier to say, I think when we say mind altogether, it's easier understanding. But soul is the word that's used in the scripture. The point of this, and all throughout the Bible, we see that we need to pay attention to our body, our mind, and our spirit. And when you think about everything that you have tried so far to gain healing from this issue, you've only focused on one of these concerns, maybe two. So when we look at body, mind, and spirit, what we're really talking about here is for our body, we're talking about our physical health. And for our mind, our will, and our emotions, we're talking about our emotional health. And of course, for our spirit, we're talking about our spiritual health. So for our spirit, we're focusing on our spiritual health. And I want to make a distinction. When I talk about spiritual health, I'm talking about our relationship with God. I'm not speaking of it in a woo-woo way. There's a lot of things out there in a holistic framework. They're talking about body, mind, and spirit as well. And the spirit they mean is something different than what I'm talking about today. Again, if you watch any of my videos, you'll know I mean spiritual health according to the Bible and our relationship with God. And so that's a very important piece. But in order to heal from bipolar disorder, and how I healed was I focused on my physical, emotional, and spiritual health at the same time with the intention of healing. I stopped looking at how to manage the problem. I switched my focus on healing. And that is one of the problems. Some of the things that you have done around bipolar disorder has been for the purpose of management. And what management looks like in these areas, it looks like this. For the body, we will go and take medications. Now, medications doesn't get to heal anything, okay? Medications is really to alter the brain chemistry. That's the intention. Unfortunately, and I've got other videos about this, doctors, psychiatrists don't really understand what's happening in your body with a medication. But the concept is that it alters the brain chemistry in a way that we hope that we can manage this better. Like, that's the hope. But bipolar disorder is incredibly hard to medicate. It usually requires a cocktail of medications. I was on 3 different medications to try to manage the condition. That's pretty standard for bipolar disorder. And it usually takes years to get to a combination of things that kind of keeps the condition under control. And so medication is never designed to heal anything. It's only designed to handle symptoms and to manage the problem. And so again, medications deal with the body part, they deal with the brain chemistry part, but it's not designed to heal. And then for the mind, then this is what typically people will go to counseling. And really counseling is, again, it's a management technique. And the reason why counseling is really a management technique is, as I said earlier, counselors don't believe that you can heal. Even a Christian counselor doesn't really believe that you can heal from bipolar disorder, and nothing in their training or their education is going to, like, they don't understand how to heal because they've been told it's not possible to heal. And so there's nothing in their toolkit that can actually walk you through the process of healing. And then for the spirit, then this is where a lot of times we will go to our churches and we will pray and we will read the Bible. And I, of course, am all for that. However, the way we approach that is still management. For most of us, we go into a church setting, we maybe talk to our pastor, and it's like, are you praying? Are you reading your Bible? But these are meant as management tools. They're not designed to look at actually healing spiritually. And that's what is different about what I went through and what I take our clients through, as I focus on the healing. And so if you take these 3 same categories, and now we go, okay, we don't want to just manage the problem. That's no longer what we want. We want to focus on healing. What does that look like? Well, what that looks like is, for the body, we understand, yes, there's something wrong with my body. There's something wrong with my brain. This is true. We don't really like that, but yes, there's something going on chemically in your body. And so how do we change that? And so we want to focus on, how do we heal the brain chemistry? If we can get the brain to heal and get the brain to produce the right chemicals, much of the problems that you're facing will start to subside. All of a sudden, you start to sleep better. You notice that the emotional roller coaster isn't going up and down so much. You feel a lot more in control of your emotions. A lot of things will change for you if you simply address the brain chemistry. And how we do that is, again, remembering the brain is part of our body, and we look at how to heal the brain chemistry. There's steps in this. I'll get to that in a minute. But first, to understand, we're going to look at healing the brain chemistry. For the mind, we're going to look at a completely different, we're going to look at a paradigm shift here, is really what we want to do here. So in the mind, we're looking for a paradigm shift. And if I really can draw out the difference here, is that when you go to counseling, the primary thing we do with counselors is we focus on the past. We focus on the trauma that brought us to this place, all the bad stuff that happened. Pretty much across the board, it's understand that if you're dealing with bipolar disorder, most likely you're dealing with significant trauma. There's some argument about that, which I won't get into, but pretty much standard. The reason you're going to counseling is because you're looking at trauma. Trauma is something that happened in the past. And when you shift your focus to looking at the future and what God has for you, everything changes. And so I'm not dismissing that trauma has played a part in this, sure. But what we do all day long in the counselor's office is stare back there at the trauma, when what we really should be doing is going to the future and going, what does God have for me in the future? What does God want to do with me right now? And where does he want to take me in the future? And that is a game changer. And so the paradigm shift that we're looking for is we're going to be forward focused. And the other thing that we would do emotionally is that we want to be, can't write and talk at the same time apparently. I had to stop there. Okay, the paradigm shift that we're looking for, the second one, is to focus on living out of truth. Bipolar disorder can feel like your life is built on sand, on shifting sand. And just like when the Bible gives that analogy of a man who builds his life on sand, when the storms come, the house falls. But the man who builds his house on a rock, he's on solid ground, and the storm came and he was solid, right? There's that parable. And this is true for bipolar disorder as well. And how you gain a foundation of solidness is living your life by truth. Understanding truth in your heart and your mind will change everything. And so this is another part of that healing process, is going to a paradigm shift to understand forward focusing and living in the truth. And then finally, on spiritual health, we're going to look at the relationship with God. This alone is very, very different. I feel like so many, unfortunately, even in our churches, we don't really understand. Like, we think church is about religion. We think the Bible is a book of religion. Bible is not a book of religion. Bible is a book about how we are to have a relationship with God. It's for us to understand who God is and how we are to live. It is not a book about religion. Religion is man-made, and it's confining, and it's constricting, and it's a rule book. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a relationship with God. And so much of what is happening in our body and our mind and our spirit is about our relationship with God. Like, everything ties back to that core. And so we must focus on healing our relationship with God and allowing this to be a proper relationship. It's so amazing to me time and time again as I work with clients through issues. A huge part of what is off is their relationship with God. And so when we get that right, so much of this changes. So with your relationship with God, of course, we are going to be we're going to be praying and looking at the Bible, but it's going to be from a different standpoint. It's going to be to just be whole and healthy as a person in its entirety. And so we're looking at having good spiritual health rather than just trying to manage a problem. And the other part of our spiritual health is we're going to start to look to the Bible as our foundation of truth. Again, remember how this was tied into our mind. So the Bible has got to be that foundation for truth. And what I hear so many times where my clients, their minds are blown, is that they start to understand that everything they face in life, every problem that they face in life, they can go to the Bible to find a solution. The Bible has something to say about everything. And many times we don't understand this, but this, again, is how we lay that rock and that foundation for us to be emotionally, physically, and spiritually healthy. So these are the three parts of how we would heal emotionally, physically, how I healed emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and what I take our clients through as well. So now you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm with you. I understand I need to heal emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I understand these pieces. Now let me take you another layer deeper. So another layer deeper on this, like, what are the smaller steps, those pieces in there that we need to do to heal the body? So from brain chemistry, a lot of people, they immediately think of gut health. And yes, that is definitely a huge part of it, right? Your gut is like your second brain, and it contributes to what's happening in your brain and what your brain is producing for chemicals. So this part is true. But the next part is where people get into trouble all the time. They think, okay, I got to heal my gut health, so I'll take some probiotics and I'll take some supplements and maybe I'll have some yogurt, and then that's that. doesn't work that way. If you want to heal your gut health, if you want to heal your brain chemistry, you're going to have to take a deep dive into what's happening in your life for nutrition. And here is, you've got to be re-educated. Nutrition was probably the number one thing that took the longest for me to understand. Like if I look at all the books and everything of all the research that I had to do for years to get out of this mess, nutrition was the one that I really had to get a new understanding, because in America, we are taught some terrible, terrible things. Like most of the things that you think are healthy are actually, you've been taught that from our food culture and from those that are making money on our food. That's how it is. We don't understand food from a place of basically everything we put in our mouth. Every piece of food we put into our mouth is either helping our body heal, or it's a detriment to our body and tearing our body down. There's very little foods that we take in that we're like, oh, this is neutral. It's either helping or it's hurting. And you've got to know the difference. And so much of what we think is healthy all the time, oh, I'm eating healthy. And you look at what they're, like, that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all, because we've been miseducated. And so for nutrition, we have to get this right in order to allow our brain chemistry to heal. And without our brain chemistry healing, you don't have physical health. And so we don't have, like, the bipolar disorder just continues to go round and round the mountain if we don't deal with this. So nutrition is a must. It's not that complicated. This is one of the things I love to break down for our clients and make sure they really understand this. Again, all of that's in the book, but nutrition is a huge key to healing brain chemistry. You can't just do this by eating some yogurt. In fact, that's a really bad idea. Yogurt's just a bad idea altogether, but you can't just take one supplement and have your brain chemistry heal. You just can't do it. So the next thing that you need to really understand to gain physical healing is sleep. Now, if you've been dealing with bipolar disorder for any length of time, you understand that when you get into trouble, when you look at the danger zone of having to go back in the hospital, what is off? Sleep every time, right? And when the depression side gets too high, what's also off? Sleep. You're sleeping now too much. All you want to do is sleep. And even though you're sleeping, you're not feeling refreshed, right? So something is happening with your sleep. And the sleep is a huge part in what's happening in your brain chemistry. And of course, if you're not getting sleep, then it's really hard to control your emotions, right? Your mind, you're not thinking clearly. If you're not getting enough sleep, it's hard to pray. It's hard to have a real good connection with God. And so this, again, all these things are really related. You can't take any one of these pieces and heal on its own. You have to put all of these pieces together. So sleep is a huge part of it. And then the third part is movement. And I like to say movement instead of exercise, because we have a lot of terrible things that we think we know. We think we know a lot of things. We think we know about exercise and what's required for exercise, and it's really not exercise that you need so much as movement. And I like to really point that out because I usually have two spectrums. I either have people that are exercise fanatics and they're exercising a lot to try to manage their disorder or sometimes anxiety, depression, but they're using a lot of exercise to manage it. Or you've got the other side, which are just so unhealthy, they're not exercising at all. And so you don't have to become a runner, but you do need to get your body moving. This is a whole science in itself on physiology and the connections to good health and movement. Many, many books on that as well. So again, these are the three things that are real big deals for being able to heal the body, to heal physically, is nutrition, sleep, and movement. And so now when we look at healing the mind and look at healing our emotional health, then what we're going to be looking at is, with this paradigm shift, really you're going to look at mindset. And mindset is such an interesting thing because it's become a real vogue topic. Even Mel Robbins is talking about mindset. Years ago, maybe she was the one who really pushed it forward. I'm not sure. But all these coaches, especially in the business sector, if you're a business person, then you know how important mindset is. But mindset can really get into murky waters if you're not tied into the Bible. Like, you can come up with some really wonky mindset and just be declaring good things about life, and that is not going to do it unless you understand the truth of God's word. So you've got to change your mindset to align with the truth of God's word. And that's where things will really change for you. And so again, with your mind, emotional health, we need to work on our mindset. And this is like a muscle. When you get this down and you really start living your life out of a place of emotional health and good mindset based on the Bible, you have to continue to lift that muscle and to build those mental muscles to continue to have a good mindset. And so the other part of this, the other part of emotional health is so important that I do not ignore trauma because, and we all, like, this is standard. Unfortunately, of all these things I've mentioned, like, this is the one thing that you probably have done with your counselor, right? You've talked about the trauma. You're probably good right now. You probably don't need to spend any more talking about this right now. Because the interesting thing is, if you keep staring at that trauma, and you keep beating on it, and you haven't dealt with the brain chemistry, and I'm not talking about meds, because again, meds is only going to alter it slightly. It's only going to make some changes. If you don't heal the brain chemistry, whatever work you're doing here on the trauma won't set in. It won't actually allow you to heal because it can't. Your brain won't allow it to heal because your brain chemistry is off. And so you've got to be able to do these things together. And the thing about the trauma is most of the time we stare, like we go to the counselor and we're staring back at the past, right? It's like, oh, let me tell you how it felt and all the things. And again, I'm not minimizing it hurt. I get it, okay? Was there, Ben got the t-shirt, okay? Trauma hurts. But in order to heal, we're looking at the wrong thing. And I have videos about this, the right way to heal trauma. But really, you've got to be looking at how it has changed the way you view yourself, the way you view the world, and the way you view God. And when you deal with trauma from that perspective, it allows it to actually heal. But again, unless you're sleeping, unless you're doing the physical things, unless you're making sure you bring this to the feet of Jesus, it doesn't heal. Because when you look at trauma and you're not healing out of a perspective of God to allow Him to deal with the shame and the guilt, then you've still got those problems. And so trauma is really, it's kind of an overlap of these things. But again, with the absence of good physical health, it just keeps going around the mountain. So now we've talked about what needs to happen physically, emotionally. Let's get a little deeper into the spiritual health side. On the spiritual health, again, we're looking at the relationship with God. The most important to understand about our spiritual health, or actually just healing spiritual in general, what I like to say is we're going to do things in the natural and expect God to show up in the supernatural. And He's faithful to do that every time. And that was what was different about my particular process is I asked God, how do I heal? So many times we just go to our prayer, and I did this for years, right? God, heal me, heal my mind, heal my mind, heal my mind. And finally I changed my question to, how do I heal? And that's when all of this unlocked. And so when all of this unlocked, I realized, okay, I'm gonna partner with you. God, I'm partnering with you. I'm gonna take care of my end. I'm gonna pay attention to my body. I'm gonna do what I need to do in my mind. And God, I'm gonna ask you to bring what you bring, which is you are the God that heals. Your name is Jehovah Rapha, which means the God that heals. And I'm going to ask you to bring that supernatural healing to add to everything that I'm doing here. And everything that I'm doing here really it's all based on biblical principles. Everything I do, I'm always double checking. Like if I was going to do anything in my life, I was always checking with the Bible. And if I bring anything to my clients, I'm like checking with the Bible. It always has to line up with those biblical principles. That's how we know things work. Like if it lines up with a biblical principle, then we know, okay, we've got a good thing going. So again, on the spiritual health, what I need to understand is one of God's names is Jehovah Rapha, which means the God that heals. And so this is a partnership. So everything I'm doing to heal bipolar disorder is coming to God to go, God, you are a healer. Heal me as I go through this process and I go through this journey. And He is faithful to do that over and over again. The other part for spiritual health that you do not want to miss is forgiveness. So many people, because we mentioned earlier, trauma and other things, just life. And life, as you're going through life, it's messy and you bump into other people. And as you bump into other people, there's things that happen and you have to forgive. If you hold on to unforgiveness, And so somebody has offended you or hurt you and you hold on to that. It roots in your heart, causes bitterness, and causes physical problems. It will affect the brain chemistry. And so forgiveness is a spiritual matter, and it has to be taken care of in order for healing to happen overall. The other part of spiritual health that is so important is spiritual warfare. This is another one of those topics that we just don't talk about a whole lot in our churches anymore. Used to be a big topic. And we've just kind of come away from that. But you better believe that spiritual warfare is a part of the overall bipolar disorder problem. Like, it is part of the problem. Now, it isn't the only problem, and that's why we also get into trouble, because a lot of times, again, we have, here is where we just deal with our spiritual health when we go to church, and we just deal with our mind when we go to the counselor's office. I don't know how I would represent that with the drawing. I don't know. And my body, right? I'm just focusing on my body. I'm just taking meds. And it doesn't work that way. So we've got to do all three in order for healing to happen. So now that you understand the how, and it's not nearly as complicated as this whiteboard diagram, but it is hard to try to chunk it down 10 years of learning into less than 40 minutes and to put it in this diagram here. But the beautiful part of all of this is that as I take in hundreds of people through this process, I've gotten better at determining what the most important parts are and leaving off the non-essentials. So if you are serious about changing your life, if you're tired of having bipolar disorder push you around and you want freedom, you can learn the strategy and apply it so that you can change your own life. So I have two options for you to really learn the strategy and change your own life. The first is the book, and basically that's the self-guided version. You can read it, you can apply it, you can change your life. And of course, I also have the coaching option where I walk with you through the process as you learn and implement the biblical principles that are needed for healing. Now, right now, at the exact moment of this recording, the coaching room is on a wait list. That will change shortly, and I'll be sure to update the description to make sure that you know that it's available. And basically, the first step in that process is really to watch the masterclass. The first step for working with me personally is to watch the masterclass. And so if you pick up the book or any of my freebies, I'll be sure to notify you when that masterclass is ready and when we're taking applications for my next round of Coaching Champions. My encouragement to you is this: I would not delay. You are going to continue to face this. Whether you ignore it or you just keep doing what you're doing, time is going to continue to march on. It is possible to achieve emotional mastery and to lead a different life. And this freedom isn't just for you. It's also for your children so that they can experience freedom. And so you can impact the lives of others. So I take a look at the links in the description and get on the path of healing now. And now that you understand what is possible for you and how to get there, you need to discover the lies that the medical community continues to indoctrinate you with. I call this the medication programming trap, and you probably already have fallen for it. You can check out the video right here.